I've been to Black Lives Matter protests that were overwhelmingly 95% female, and I've seen them shut down city blocks. And I've watched the police come and then cordon off the streets without, you know how usually you have to file with the city when you're going to do a protest or something of that nature. I've seen them do pop-up protests and have the police cordon off the streets for the march to go. And yet at the same time, when black men show up at protests in even numbers, not even predominantly, when they show up in even numbers as black women, the police show up in riot gear. I'll just ask you, Gus, if 200 black men shut down the city streets, what's the police response? I can't even. I live in Seattle. Yeah.
I don't think they have 200 black males, but let's just say that they have 200 black males who live in Seattle. Man, they looted a jewelry store, many of them actually, here in all of the nonsense that's been going on since George Floyd in the name of George. They looted the Cheesecake Factory and all of that, and I said that repeatedly in the name of Move and the Black Panther Party and George Jackson and anybody else you want to think of. It didn't have to be 200. It could have been 5.
The clip that you just heard was from the show The Cows with Gus, and he was interviewing our beloved Dr. Tiasan Johnson. Dr. Johnson has talked about this numerous times, about the difference between black men and black women and how we're treated as far as white supremacy and police and all this stuff is concerned. And he went into great detail about the duality, about the worlds of black men and black women. So if you want to, you can actually go back and peruse the whole show. It's about 3 hours, and that would make sense for this particular clip. So I just took a little portion about the Black Lives Matter segment and how men are treated when they go out and protest. And the reason I'm doing this is because it was maybe back when the George Floyd protests first started, there was this question that black men were cowards and that black men were too cowardly to go out and march the same way women were. And I had a lot of people come to my page, come on my Facebook page, come to my Twitter saying this. And actually with women coming back and said the black boys, the young black men don't want to go out and face these marches same way the white women, the white men, and even the black women were doing. And Dr. Johnson kept saying that the reason that they don't do it is because the reaction that they get is completely different. So, as I often do, I tuck that into my back pocket and I keep it waiting for another piece to drop. And a few days ago, a piece did drop coming out of the New York Times. So I'm going to read this article, and I'll be back on the other side with my commentary. NYPD used facial recognition to track down Black Lives Matter activists. Mayor Bill de Blasio says standards need to be reassessed. This is from August 18, 2020, from the New York Times. The New York City Police Department used a facial recognition software to track down a Black Lives Matter activist accused of assault after allegedly shouting into a police officer's ear with a bullhorn. Violent. The mayor's office says it will reassess standards for using facial recognition after criticism that the case shows the technology is being used indiscriminately. On August 7th, the police department sent dozens of police officers, including some in riot gear, to the home of 28-year-old activist Derrick Ingram. A standoff followed, live streamed from Ingram on Instagram, during which he repeatedly asked officers to produce a search warrant. They refused to do so. After protesters supporting Ingram flocked to the street, the NYPD stood down, and Ingram turned himself into the police the next day. The NYPD has been criticized for the disproportionate show of force in pursuing Ingram. That's what Dr. Johnson was just saying, the disproportionate use of force. And now also for its use of facial recognition to track him down. Video of the August 7th standoff captured by Freedom News TV shows officers outside Ingram's home examining a document titled Facial Identification Section Informational Lead Report, which includes what appears to be a photo of Ingram taken from his Instagram. The NYPD confirmed to Gothamist that it used facial recognition during the investigation. The NYPD uses facial recognition as a limited investigative tool, comparing a still image from a surveillance video to a pool of lawfully possessed arrest photos, said a spokesperson. But it's unclear if the photo of Ingram taken from social media was part of this search. If so, it would constitute a breach of NYPD's own policy. It is neither a still image from a surveillance video nor an arrest photo. In response to the report, NYC Mayor Bill de Blasio told Gothamists that his office would re-examine the standards of police use of facial recognition. We have to be very careful and very limited with our use of anything involving facial recognition, de Blasio said. Those standards need to be reassessed. It's something I will do with my team and with NYPD. Skipping down, Mayor de Blasio said this week that NYPD is sparing in its use of facial recognition and never uses the technology to undermine or affect public expression or public protest. In Ingram's case, the activist is accused of yelling into an officer's ear with a bullhorn during a protest in June, which the NYPD caused pain and protracted impairment of hearing. Oh, such violence. Ingram himself told Gothamists that activists were being specifically targeted with this technology because of what we're protesting and because we're trying to deconstruct a system that they're a part of, he added. A waste of taxpayer money and dollars could be allocated to people struggling throughout the city. I put the link in the description, even though this article is about facial recognition, because something else happened in, I think it was Miami. Miami's having the same problem about facial recognition. In fact, they did track down a protester, but this protester hit an officer with a rock and a hit, okay? This dude used a bullhorn to protest. And he used facial recognition to track him down, and they sent dozens of officers to actually hunt this guy down in riot gear because he's a black man. Disproportionate use of force, the same thing Dr. Johnson was saying, which is the reason that you do not have a whole lot of black men really out there protesting. It takes a lot of courage for a black man to get out there and protest. I do mean lots of courage, because you could be locked up, you could be beat up, you could be hunted down, you could be killed. In the case of the Ferguson protesters, the females that came from Black Lives Matters, they came in, they protested from out of town. They were never hurt, they were never touched. In fact, they got promoted. There's one that's going into a business relationship with Oprah Winfrey. Just reading that. All the male Ferguson protesters, there were 7 of them, they're all dead. Disproportionate use of force. Black men and black women live different lives, they do. They have different realities, they do. It's easy to call somebody a coward if you're a female and you know you won't be touched. If they take you down, they're gonna use zip cords. They're gonna use plastic ties to take you down. If you're a black male and you're protesting, you could wind up like George Floyd. Tell me that the females would get treated like George Floyd, where you would actually have an officer standing on a woman's neck for 8 minutes to restrain her. Really, I don't mind theory. In theory, everybody's supposed to be treated equally. In theory, a man and a woman should be treated equally. In the real world, it doesn't work that way. Women know in the real world it doesn't work that way. Black women know in the real world it doesn't work that way. The last clip I just played about a mother raising her son knows that she's raising her black boy into a society that hates him. They know that. But then when you get grown, they expect you to do the same thing that they do in an oppressive society that's built on making you an underclass. And you're supposed to alpha your way through it, something that's never been done in history. If this doesn't demonstrate exactly what Dr. Johnson has been talking about, screaming about for 5 years, nothing will. I had hoped that he would have done this piece, but you know what? He's got to teach classes and he don't have time. So I borrowed his voice and his insight to actually highlight this, because this, if nothing else, this piece highlights the difference. All those protesters out there, most of them white women and black women, none of them had dozens of officers in riot gear going to their house to arrest him on a trumped up charge. The officer's ear was damaged by a bullhorn. Get the entire fuck out of here. I guess they would have found fentanyl in his bloodstream if they had beat him up and drug him out. Like Dave Chappelle says, sprinkle some crack on him. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. This is BGS out. Now, see you guys on the next one. Peace.